Hey G-Fans, GoJFan93 here as well as Super Godzilla Gaming, and welcome to our second of an 8-part series of our Godzilla Retrospective series. Last time we looked at some old school Godzilla games from the Commodore 64 and MSX days. Now we will be taking a look at the Godzilla games from the 8 and 16-bit era. So let's begin. Alright, let's begin with the game that everyone knows about, Godzilla Monster of Monsters, released in 1988 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. In this game, you control Godzilla and Mothra as they go through many stages fighting not only Godzilla monsters, but some other Toho Universe monsters as well.
The game features a plethora of Toho Kaiju goodness, including Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Mechagodzilla, Gigan, Hedorah, Baragon, Varan, Mogira, and Gazora.
The objective of the game is to advance the board by selecting side-scroller type levels and crush your way to victory. You will then eventually run into enemy monsters and will have one-on-one fight. Once you get past them, you must get Godzilla and Mothra to the end of the map to advance to the next board.
While it sounds simple in concept, the game can be very hard and frustrating at times due to the bullet hell nature of the combat system. But thanks to the many health power-ups that appear out of rocks or killing enemies, it can still be very enjoyable. Even if Mothra is continually knocked to the bottom left of the screen, try that against Gazora. Oh, it's the worst.
Not a bad way to introduce Godzilla onto home consoles, but then they had to go and mess that up in the next game. Oh no, not this game.
What's up, Goji fan? It can't be that bad, can it?
Oh, yes it is. Let's just get on with it. Godzilla 2 War of the Monsters was developed for NES in 1991, but was never released in Japan. Oh gee, I wonder why. Here we have another strategy game where you don't play as Godzilla, but as the military trying to stop him. Kind of like the first Godzilla game on Commodore 64.
As you might expect, the game was not very well received by fans because, well, the gameplay was kind of confusing. Even the booklet didn't really alleviate this problem. It's almost like a game of chess. You have to move military forces to fight monsters, have them retreat so they aren't destroyed, and just keep doing that pattern for whatever monsters you encounter. It's a bit of a slog. Even Wikizilla doesn't have an explanation on how the gameplay mechanics work.
Let's move on. Okay, before we continue, there is another game that Godzilla had a cameo in, but unfortunately we could not find any footage of it. But in the game Circus Caper, Godzilla shows up somehow and helps the player do something. Yeah. Okay, next on our list is the infamous Super Nintendo classic, Super Godzilla, released in 1993. Super Godzilla Gaming, you want to take it from here?
Oh, gladly. This game is my jam. So, Super Godzilla is not a traditional type of Godzilla game of destroying cities. Instead, it's kind of like the opposite. You guide Godzilla through the city to get to your objectives. The story in a nutshell is something like out of an old school movie. Aliens are invading the Earth, and it's up to you as the military to guide Godzilla to the enemy so he can save the world. The game is sort of split into two screens. The top screen shows Godzilla walking through the city, destroying whatever is in his path. The bottom screen is the guide, where you, the player, move the little blue ball, which is Godzilla, and your ultimate goal is to move towards the pink ball, which is the enemy monster. Along the way, you can stomp on enemy tanks that keep shooting at you from a distance, and you can get energy by running into the power plants that humans have set up for you. Now that's the first game mechanic. The second part of the game is the combat system. It's not really a fighter, but it's kind of like a game of cat and mouse to see who lands a first hit. What you have to do is walk up to a boss, hit them, walk backwards, and then select the attack you want to use on the bottom part of the screen. It's a little bit awkward at first, but it can get pretty intense in the later stages. Thankfully, the first boss, King Ghidorah, doesn't have many little gimmicks to worry about, but as the story progresses, bosses become increasingly more difficult. Some of them may be immune to your atomic breath, or may be immune to your body slams, so you have to pay very close attention. And depending on your fighting spirit, you will get either weak attacks or really strong attacks. But perhaps the most well-known aspect of this game is how it introduced two new monsters, Super Godzilla, the titular monster of the game, and the final boss, Bagan, a monster that was scrapped from many Godzilla and Toho films.
Nicely said. Time to move on to the next game. The next game is the first official great fighting Godzilla game, Godzilla Battle Legends, made for the Turbo Duo in 1993, developed by Alpha Systems and published by Hudson Soft in the States. This game is definitely one of the best 2D fighting Godzilla games out there. The game has a plethora of monsters to play, as well as having great visuals and music.
What's really cool about this game is that it features many different incarnations of Godzilla throughout his movie history. The game is structured more like a traditional fighting game than anything we have talked about so far, which is a real treat. Unfortunately, there's not much else to really say about it, but it's still a solid Godzilla game and worth checking out.
Now we have the sequel to Battle Legends, released in 1994 on the Super Famicom. There was supposed to be an American version called Godzilla Destroy All Monsters, not to be confused with the game on GameCube. It was cancelled for American audiences. The game does not really feel like a sequel, as more of a step backwards from what Battle Legends had. It has fewer characters and it's way harder than Battle Legends.
Still, the game has very tight controls and plenty of moves for the monsters to use. It is very fun to play against friends, but be warned that the AI is unforgiving in this sequel.
Well, that's all for the 8 to 16-bit games, but before we go, we have another game Godzilla was in. In the game Battle Soccer for the Super Famicom, Godzilla has a cameo. The game is mainly a tokusatsu crossover with Ultraman, Kamen Rider, Gundam, and Godzilla. Well guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the GVG Retrospective. Tune back in next week where we will be taking a look at the handheld Godzilla games. Till then, stay big, G fans.